Okay, excellent. At this point, I'll call to order the Addison County Economic Development Corp. Board meeting for Thursday, July 24th, 2025. First, our order of business would be, we'll start off with introductions. I'm Jason LaRock, board chair, and we more so for the people that are here live that don't show up on the screen. I think everybody else will show up in the recording. So
we just want intros of folks in the room here.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most efficient way to do it.
Richard, you want to start?
Yeah, Richard McCurr, East Middlebury.
Art Foster, Middlebury.
Camille Lyons, ACEDC.
Nicole Bashman, ACEDC.
And Alex Armani-Mon, ACEDC.
I can't talk.
Excellent, thank you. Next item would be to approve the agenda. This is the draft agenda. Is there any changes that anyone would like to make before we get started?
Jason, I do have an informational item on our new member promotion. So
when would you like to do that?
I think we could do that after we do business related to grants and our engineering contract. So we can push it to the end, but would like to take some time to at least update the board on that outside of our staff report, because I think we'll want to do a little conversation around that.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
All right, do we have a motion to accept the revised agenda?
So moved.
And moved. Is there a second? All right, it's been seconded. All those in favor, or any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. All right. Next item that passed. Next item would be to vote on approval of the meeting minutes June. Those were included in the packet on the SharePoint site. Do we have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay.
I'm abstaining, Jason.
Okay,
I wasn't here.
all right, one abstention. Any others? All right, the meeting minutes have been approved. I'm going to turn it over to Alex for the June staff activities report.
Thank you, Jason. So the full report is available on SharePoint, but a couple of highlights I will touch on real quick. First, we are doing some development focused work, specifically around housing in Virgins, Middlebury, and Moncton, actually. So I'll refrain from going into too much detail on these projects. We will have more substantive updates at future meetings, beginning, likely in August, but just want to let folks know that post-retreat housing continues to be a really big priority for staff, and it's something we are spending a lot of time on and working with our municipal partners around facilitating new housing development. So really excited with the progress we've made there, and just want the board to know we have some very exciting projects in the pipeline. So look forward to future updates on that, but just want folks to know we're making some really good progress there at the local level. And we also remain engaged with BEPC at the state level around rulemaking on project-based TIF. Those rules will be out in November. They are on pace to open applications for that in January, and it looks like we will have an important role to play with that as well. The other housing related update, we do have a housing strategy, pretty robust housing strategy will be presented to the board in August with some new projects and initiatives, but really excited with the way that's come together. So again, look forward to more news on the housing front. Also, as far as lending goes, we've really made a point of engaging with new lending partners over the last month or two, again, post-retreat. looking at how we can engage more lending partners to create a more robust pipeline for borrowers. So I would say since the beginning of June, have had direct meetings with 3 new lending partners, have had engagement or interaction via email with meetings forthcoming with 2 other additional partners, and really excited with the potential to have new referrals come to us from other lending partners. So really excited with that. And at the same time, we have 3 potential borrowers who are looking promising as far as future applications that will come before the loan committee again as early as August. So we are seeing, I think, a pretty encouraging pickup in loan activity. 2024 and the first half of 2025 are very slow in terms of lending activity. So really excited to see some increased interest lately. With that said, I do want to share with the board that we have had challenges with USDARD's IRP application process. I have put an email into USDA staff basically asking for some clarification on the status of our IRP application. We submitted an updated application in March, and frankly, they just have not been great about giving us clear feedback on the status of that application. Our understanding is that to date, it has not been funded and is now being considered for a current funding round, but that's made it difficult for us to really plan for what our future lending capacity is going to be. So I'm hopeful we can get some engagement with USDA staff to let the board know, hey, here's where we stand. As of today, we're around in total $250,000 to about $280,000 in available funds to loan out. That includes both our USDA funds as well as our ACEDC fund. That sounds like a big number considering the size of our most recent loan was $30,000, but with the 3 potential loans we have lined up right now, that could take a significant chunk out of that. And without a recapitalization on the horizon, we could be getting to a point theoretically that our lending capacity could be limited for a time. So we'll provide more updates on that as we get feedback from USDA, but just want folks to know the good news is we're seeing more borrower demand. The bad news is we don't have clear direction on when we can see a recapitalization from USDA. Otherwise, grants continue to be busy, both in terms of working with grant clients, both businesses and community partners, as well as some exciting opportunities for us to acquire some capacity grants that would help with our balance sheet. And one in particular that we're really excited about is a grant with the UVM Leahy Institute for Rural Partnerships. That again could help offset costs of our operations to work towards some exciting future projects. We will be talking about grants quite a bit in this meeting though, so I will refrain from going any deeper. Otherwise, want folks to know that we are doing a lot of work around the artisan lending program that was discussed at the retreat, as well as revisiting the Acorn Food Hub. There's actually some interesting synergy we're seeing between those 2 projects. So again, won't go into too much detail now since a lot of those conversations are occurring privately, but look forward to some more updates on that soon. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention is I am working with the executive committee on really updating our financial reporting and how that's presented to the board each month. My understanding is that previously Fred would provide financial reports on a quarterly basis. I would like to move to monthly financial reporting. However, we currently get about a 38 page financial package from our accountant's office. We'd like to condense that down to 2 or 3 pages, just the essential information. So we're working on compiling that right now, but I want the board to know that in future meetings, we will likely be including a monthly financial update, which I think will help us with our accountability and just our budget tracking throughout the year. And last thing I'll mention is I have been doing some recruitment for new board members. I have 2 folks that I would like to bring forward to the nominating committee in August. Happy to talk a little bit more about that. But again, would maybe like to wait until we have them in front of the nominating committee to share that information publicly. So that's things continue to be busy. Really encouraged by the progress we're making on all the different things included in our very robust 1-year operating strategy. So happy to entertain any questions or comments. Otherwise, we can move on with the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
No, Any questions for Alex? Well, we'll move on. Next on our agenda is citizen comments. This is an opportunity to raise or address issues not otherwise included on the agenda, or both board members and non-board members. Do we have any comments or concerns at this time? All right, hearing none. Next, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dave Castle to handle the next item on the agenda.
All right. So Alex, you wanted to review the Otter Creek engineering documentation?
Yeah, so we do have our contract from Otter Creek Engineering. The contract has been executed or approved by the town of Middlebury. Once I get authorization from the board to add our signature, I will then send it to Middlebury College for their signature. It's pretty standard and really mirrors the agreement that we received back in, I believe it was June. The one thing I do want to mention, folks are aware of the conflict of interest that exists with this contract. We had requested some specific information or specific language in the contract acknowledging the conflict of interest. There's not a clause, an explicit clause in the contract. So what we're doing and what I'm recommending is attaching our conflict of interest disclosure as an appendix to the contract, and you can see that here. So the contract again does include an appendix that identifies and acknowledges that conflict of interest. So I think that should suffice for again just being accountable and reporting on steps being taken there. Otherwise, it's all fairly straightforward. I believe Otter Creek has started some base mapping, so the project is progressing, and we'll be able to continue on schedule for completion in January. With execution by us and then the college. So again, all fairly standard, fairly straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions folks may have. Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay, yeah, I think attaching that conflict of interest is a good idea. So thank you for doing that.
And just for reference, so folks are aware, we were also required to attach our grant agreement with the state of Vermont. So just if folks are reviewing it and are curious, that's what this other attachment is here. So.
Okay.
Alex, is this in the, I'm looking at the board materials. Oh, I might have been looking at June. I gotta look in July. Never mind. It's in the board materials, right?
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
should be there.
Sorry, I spelled the wrong one. Yep, I got it.
Are there any other comments about the Otter Creek engineering contract? All right, Jason, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Back to my agenda here. So the next item of business would be to update the grant services policy.
Sorry, Jason, I think we need
Actually, yeah, if you guys haven't taken action on that, I'm going to turn it back to Dave.
Do you just need what action do you need?
we just need a motion to approve the contract. Sorry, Adam, did you have I think Adam's
No,
made a motion.
I was just gonna make the motion to approve the contract.
Can I just ask a question?
Do we have
I'm wondering if there's another conflict, which is Middlebury College is a signatory to this contract as well. And I'm an officer. So
Yes, and
I just,
yeah.
right? I mean, I just want to make sure that we're disclosing everything. I probably should abstain from this also, right? Because I'm an officer of the corporation at Middlebury.
If you'd like to abstain, we should still have a sufficient quorum.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the contract?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thanks, Chris. So we've approved the contract as it stands with the conflict of interest added.
And note the abstention.
And yeah, Sue Ritter and Jason LaRock abstained.
Sorry, Dave, was there an actual vote? I heard the motion.
I didn't hear the vote. I didn't hear the vote.
Okay,
It's just,
all in favor of approving the contract, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear no one opposed, so we have approved the contract.
All right,
Are we all set to move on?
believe so.
Believe we are. So Alex,
Yeah.
the updated grant policy.
The
Great.
compliance policy and procedures? Yeah.
Yes. Great. So I'm going to tee this off before I hand it over to Camille to go into a little more detail. So, just for reference, if folks are aware, at the retreat we discussed doing a grant policy that really focused on a fee structure that allowed us to recoup costs for the time we spend on grants, and that includes everything from research to application to grant administration. And really the motivation behind that was that grants are an important part of what we do, and we spend an awful lot of staff time doing grant assistance, but we don't necessarily generate a ton of revenue doing it. So we wanted to find a way where we could, again, recoup some of those costs. So what Camille did was spend some time coming up with a fee structure and a policy around when and how we will charge for staff time for grants, whether that's upfront fees or administrative fees incorporated into the grants. But before we get into the work Camille did, I did want to bring to the board's attention that we do actually have a board adopted grant compliance policy and procedures document. This was something that was not brought to my attention, not something I was aware of until Camille started her work on the fee structure. I believe this document was originally adopted in 2022 and amended as recently as 2024. And we have reviewed it fairly thoroughly, and frankly, I think it's a good policy. It's very robust, very thorough. So I'm very happy to see that we have it. And again, I wanted first, for informational purposes, to share with the board that this policy does exist. I would encourage folks to spend some time looking at it themselves. So the approach we ended up taking was basically taking Camille's fee structure and really positioning it as what'll be an appendix to this existing policy document. So what we'd like to do today is first of all adopt the fee structure that Camille has come up with. However, before we get into that, I did want to take a moment to call out some items in our existing board adopted policy that I think requires some attention, both some discussion and potentially some action. So the first item you'll see highlighted here, and as we go through this document, you'll see some yellow highlights and some green highlights. The yellow highlights are things that, again, I think require board attention, so both discussion and action. The green highlights are more for informational purposes, just, kind of reminders, hey, here's an important part of the policy we want folks to be aware of. So as far as things requiring board attention, the first thing under policy here is currently this policy requires that any grant that staff applies to gets board approval. And the reason I want to bring that to the board's attention is that we've had, in just the last month alone, 3, I believe maybe even 4, as of very recently, 4 grant opportunities that have been brought to our attention that have less than a month or only a month between the time they've been announced and the application deadline. So we've seen already, again, just in the very recent past, several situations where I don't think we would have had adequate time to engage with a client, come up with a strategy, give them a proposal, and then bring the proposal to the board for approval and still have adequate time to complete an application with the deadline. And Camille and I can speak to those specific instances of programs that came up. But just want the board to be aware that we are seeing a situation where if we were to follow this policy by the letter to a T, that could create some logistical challenges. So I have had this discussion with the executive committee. There's the idea to have, certain thresholds that would require board approval or to have an ad hoc committee. I see Susan has a question, so I'll open it up to discussion on that right now. Susan?
Yeah, Alex, I agree with you 100%. I also think this raises the governance question about board versus management. I mean, this is the day-to-day operations of your shop. I guess, I suppose if there's something that would constitute, I don't know, major risk or, I don't know, but this looks like I don't know why or how the board would want to be involved in the day-to-day operations of grant management. That's not our role. That's absolutely not our role. So
The other thing you mentioned for
I
context-
wouldn't even have it in there and or have it be discretionary if there's some major financial impact you'd want us to be aware of, but this is exactly what boards should not be doing, I would say.
The other thing I'll mention for context that I think is relevant, because I think it may have inspired this language, is that according to our bylaws, if there's any expenditure or commitment of ACEDC resources, that requires board approval, and where that applies to grants is just staff time. I don't know if there's any instance recently, there's none that I'm aware of, where we were actually spending hard money, spending ACEDC dollars on a grant application, whether through application fee or matching funds. But again, if we followed everything to a T, our grant work does require staff time. That is a commitment of ACEDC resources. So that's where I think the motivation was to have that board approval. But again, Susan, I think you hit the nail on the head, everything you said about management taking responsibility for this and just being efficient. So,
I mean, if you wanted to put a dollar threshold in there, great, but that is, and maybe the bylaws need to be looked at, or maybe that bylaw language is required by some other governmental entity. I don't know, but this just seems really odd to me.
Yeah.
This is a fundamental part of the operation. This is operations. It's not board level day to day. So I think, if you have to fudge it, if you have to somehow find a way to marry it with the bylaws, fine, but I'm not seeing this as
I see
necessary.
I agree with you. So I believe that, if we're doing something, if the executive director is doing something that's taking the organization in a different direction or drastically changing the shape of what we're doing, or the volume that we're doing, that's a board discussion. But day-to-day operations, especially, grants that we're working on for others, the use of staff resources, as far as organizational resources, as far as staff goes, as far as the utilization of staff, that's 100% under the purview of the executive director. The board should not be weighing in on staff's day-to-day operations and what they're doing. So we essentially have one employee as a board, and everyone else works, for Alex. So I think it may make sense that we do a variety of things, that we spend some time on governance, and that we revisit our bylaws, as well as some of these procedures. And this is the start of that process.
I think the commitment of staff resources, hours, is in the normal course, legal term.
Yeah.
Of business rather than something unusual.
Yep.
So Jason, I did make a note here, on revisiting bylaws. What I'll plan on doing is bringing this up with executive committee at the August meeting to discuss when and how we'd like to go about that, but we'll plan on making time. Of course, I think that'll occur in the context of a board meeting, but I don't know if there needs to be some ad hoc committee work around that. But I will bring that up, for discussion with the executive committee so we can come up with a plan and a strategy for reviewing bylaws before the end of the year.
That's great. Because I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in there that needs to be adjusted.
So I am gonna move on with a couple other items in this document. So we'll refrain from any motions at the moment because I think we could do a comprehensive motion. The second item here, this is just kind of a semantics thing. The ED is executive director, OM operations manager, which we currently have, AF accounting firm. So this specific language doesn't necessarily require an update, but if folks,
I already took out AD.
you did
From
already,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just so folks are aware, and I believe it might be highlighted here. So we do have in the existing policy, there were several references to an AD or an assistant director. I believe this policy in its last update was updated by Karen, our prior assistant director. So we will be taking out references to assistant director and probably updating it with just
I've been putting
GPM,
in staff
staff.
unless it's specific to me.
Okay.
Yeah, or
if-
you could just say, or designee, or
Yeah.
ED's designee, something, so you don't have to keep changing it down the line.
Yeah, thank you. The other highlights you see here relate specifically to how we were charging for grants. And I will say here, I don't think that we were actually following this policy as far as charging fees for grants. But basically the way it's outlined in the policy right now, it would be the annualized hourly rate for previously the assistant director, in this case, either myself or Camille. So our annualized hourly rate plus benefits plus indirect costs. I will just say in my experience, that will be, if we were to follow that structure, it would be extremely cost prohibitive for the folks we work with, especially a lot of our community partners and small businesses. That I think would come out to a $50 to $100 hourly rate, which again, I think would turn a lot of folks off. So we've highlighted that. Again, this is a little redundant, but this is another section we would be updating. Again, just outlining the process for board approval. From there, it's really just, again, the mentions of AD that we'd be taking out. So at this point, I think there could be a motion or actually, sorry, we should probably hold off on that. I'm gonna hand it over to Camille to talk about her updated fee structure.
Okay, so this document really walks through the different steps of a grant, starting from research all the way to administration. That first paragraph really just highlights that we want people to join as members. So a lot of fees are waived for members. And we, emphasize that in all our conversations throughout grant work, which is something we hadn't necessarily done before. So starting with research, I didn't want to put a price tag on this. So the distinction here is that members will be provided with a list of opportunities with each program's parameters, application difficulty, and likelihood of success, in addition to direct consultation with ACEDC staff. And for non-members, the service is subject to current capacity of ACEDC, and direct consultation is limited. So just highlighting that we're going to be focusing on our members more with this service. However, it's not a big time commitment on my part or Alex's part, especially since I've really streamlined the process of grant matching to projects. Then letters of support, I propose that we change it to only providing letters to members. I think that makes sense in my head, that if we're supporting them, they're a member and supporting us. But happy to hear discussion on that at the end. And then the standard application process, I split into two different sections. So one is just application support, and then the other is when we are the actual applicant organization and or the one who writes the application. So for application support, I propose that we waive this fee for members. And then for non-members, we tiered it, so the first 10 hours of work would be $50. The next 10 hours of work, so 10 to 20 hours would be $100. And then for any hour that exceeds 20 would be 25. So that's a way of protecting our time if it does end up being more intensive and prevents people from taking advantage of the application support rather than making us the primary applicant or writer for that. I wanted to keep the minimum at 50 because we don't want to be dealing with charging small numbers for minimal reason. And I chose to go with $25 an hour because based on my research, that was the minimum amount of a range that a grant writer is paid. And since I am not only a beginning grant writer, but also a nonprofit grant writer, it felt right not to, like Alex said, gut people, especially our, partner organizations for anything over 25. And it's close enough to my wage that we'd get pretty much reimbursed or somewhat. So when we are the applicant organization or the writer, we would then charge $25 an hour again, but a range from 50 to 500. So increasing that a little bit more because more hours. And then for members, this fee would be the same at $25 an hour, but a maximum of 300, just showing that benefit again. So that's, the difference of 25 going to 500 is 20 hours. And then for the 30, it's 15. Yeah. So we can discuss that as well after. And then administration, again, we changed from the annualized rate. My impression was that our policy was 10%. That's what we've been doing for like the RBDG grant and other grants that we typically visit. So I kept it at 10% because I thought that was fair, made sense. And I also put in that if an organization wants us to do the administration and we weren't involved in the application process of the grant, we would also provide that service at the same rate of 10%. And then I wanted to highlight specific programs that we use and individualize the cost for those. So BGS is one of the ones we mentioned in almost every meeting with the business because it's one of the few accessible business grants. We thought this would be a great opportunity to highlight membership. So requiring a $100 fee for non-members and then waiving that for members would be similar to our loan application fee that we can bring up membership and also, highlight as another benefit of our membership that we waive fees for these kind of grants. NBRC is a very complicated program, so it has a little of a longer section. First part just talks about how we are active in the regional project priority list making, which contributes to the scoring of NBRC grants. NBRC requires a pre-application as well as an application. So if we were to help with the pre-application, then we would waive this fee for members and or charge a flat $100 fee for non-members. And then for administration or the actual application, then we would revert back to the standard application fee schedule. And then for administration, we would work in accordance with NBRC policy because they have their own policy, which I quoted here. And then for the actual administration of the grant, we do monthly reporting and annual reporting and quarterly, well, monthly invoicing. But if the grantee wanted us to play a more active role in compiling these reports, then we could go on a case-by-case basis organizing these agreements because it very much varies project to project. And then the last program that I outlined was the Rural Business Development Grant, one that we have often used in the past, like with Acorn, and this year we applied for Addison. These grants are much more intensive, the application process, so I just upped everything a little bit to $25 an hour again, but not to exceed $750 for non-members and $500 for members. And then we also incorporate the 10% administration fee. So we can discuss.
I think it's very thorough.
Yeah, Camille did a great job researching this and putting a lot of time into, I think, creating a policy that's also very dynamic and allows us to kind of adapt to all our different programs. So I'm very excited with this.
This is great. I think the fees seem fair, given our client base. I think it's well thought out. Well done.
And as
I would-
Camille mentioned, it's really structured in a way to drive membership. So
I think
So
it's
if there's
great.
no more, if there's no more discussion, I can kind of tee up what I think we'd be looking for in a motion, Jason, if that sounds
Go
good.
for it.
So I think what we'd like to do is a motion to advise the board approval requirement for grant applications, update staff language, and approval of the new grant services fee structure. So those are the three items we'd be looking to approve and amend. And we can, as a very brief informational item, bring this back to the board next month to show or present that new updated language.
Alex, this is a matter of protocol. I mean, I think in the last document, we highlighted what needed to be changed, but we don't have the actual changes.
Yeah,
You know,
that's where
It might be easier to vote on that at the next meeting unless you need a vote right now. But I think it's up to you, but with the grant services policy, it's done.
So my thought would be, I guess maybe a straw poll that folks are in support of the changes, and then we can make those changes and then bring them back to the board next month for a formal vote on the updated language.
Yep.
Let's do that.
I'm
Yeah,
good
let's
with it.
let's do that. So non-official vote of this document. All those in favor
Of the
Aye.
former, of the former
Aye.
document,
of
right?
the former document, the one that hasn't been officially revised yet, based on the proposed revisions.
Yeah, I'm good with, yeah.
Supporting the changes that Alex has proposed.
Does anyone have any objection to those? Okay, so there's your direction, Alex.
Right? We will bring that back for a formal vote next month. Thank you.
But did you want to vote on the grant
Yeah, do we-
services policy now? Because that seemed like it was good to go.
Yeah,
No.
I think we can, if we have a motion to,
So
I would move,
moved. So moved.
so it's been moved and seconded to approve the grant policy. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that an opposed? Or just a late yay? All right, sounds like that has passed. Turn it back to Alex.
So we do have in here as an item our grant outreach strategy. This doesn't require any board action or approval. So happy to turn it over to Camille to talk through this real quick. I think we can keep it, fairly brief and informational. If I can find it.
Yeah,
And, yep, this is it. So this is just, again, talking about how we are engaging folks, and the motivation here was really in just being proactive and ensuring that we have adequate time to prepare applications. So with that, I will hand it over to Camille.
Yeah, I just wanted to lay out the different things we are doing to market this, so you all know and so that we can stay true to our plans. The first part essentially says we're not marketing the policy or this outreach strategy. We're gonna create supporting materials to help market our services. We're going to do quarterly send outs. This is something that we had somewhat started with Fred, and there's been discussion around, but actually executing that, sending out 4 times a year what the upcoming grant programs are, grant opportunities, and how we can provide assistance. And then program specific send outs. So this is just highlighting the programs that we use often, like RBDG, BGS, just so people know that they are coming up. And then project specific send outs is after a meeting with a business or organization, we would follow up with them sending any grant opportunities that were discussed in that conversation. And we're also proposing that we start tracking this in a spreadsheet. We would also target clientele. So an example of that would be the Thermal Energy Network Group. When we saw the VCRD grant opportunity pop up last year, we said this looks like a good fit for them, send it their way, and create an agreement based off of our impression of the grant, rather than them coming to us. We would also like to start trialing grant workshops. So this could potentially happen this fall, maybe in the winter, later winter of, I would co-run a workshop helping our partners learn how to prepare grants more efficiently. This is something we talked about a little bit during the retreat about extending the capacity of our partners in addition to providing assistance. And then at the end, I just have a list of her prospects. So right now we're actively engaging the BGS people here listed. As you can see, we have many, and that's why we think it's going to be a great way to drum up membership. And then just a few others at the end.
And as Camille mentioned, the grant workshops were an item specifically included in the 1-year operating strategy. So again, really looking to deliver on that. We see some great value or potential in that event. So again, folks have thoughts or questions on this, would love to hear them, but we mostly just wanted to give the board a quick update on how we're being proactive in marketing our services.
I think it's great.
Right.
Once again, we don't need action on this. Does anyone have any questions for Camille or Alex?
I have a quick question, either Alex or Camille. Alex, you mentioned the CHIP program earlier. I realize it's early days for it. I imagine you will be supporting applicants within that program. Is that part of your grant services policy, or are you addressing that some other way?
That's a great question, Adam. I think we'll likely be addressing that in a different way for a couple of reasons. I do think, and we'll know for sure in November when the rules come out, but the hope there is that we are, step 1, supporting applications, but then step 2, supporting administration of those project-based TIP agreements. And if that's the case, and again, I can't say this for sure until the rules come out, but what I'm anticipating is that there will be a protocol for reimbursing RDCs who do administration through revenue generated by the TIP. So what we'll do when those rules come out is look at what their criteria requirements are for charging and paying for both application assistance and administrative services. I would love to align it as closely as possible with our grant policy, but I think we'll have to wait until we know more to really determine how exactly we'll be charging for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll turn it back to Alex for the last item on our amended agenda.
Thank you, Jason. So I've been doing a lot of work around a new member promotion. This was something also discussed at the retreat and included in our 1-year operating strategy. So the way this promotion works is that between July 1 and December 31st, so basically for the second half of the year, any new memberships we receive, we will donate a portion of that new membership due to a community partner organization. The ones we've identified are our 3 downtown organizations. So the way I've structured it is that a new member joins from Bristol, we'll make a donation to the Bristol Core organization, and Virgins will donate to the Virgins Partnership, and in Middlebury will donate to the Better Middlebury Partnership. We had also approached the chamber about making a donation to the Visitors Center for any businesses or members who join outside of our big 3 municipalities. The chamber did decide not to participate. So we don't have a community-wide partner at the moment. The current status of this is we have gotten MOUs returned from the Better Middlebury Partnership and Bristol Core, and I have sent an MOU out to Virgin's Partnership. We should be receiving that one back this week. I have not added my signature to any of these, and I was hoping to present this to the board for a vote. Ideally would have been this month, but I wanted to wait until I had all of those MOUs returned. I'm also just a little stuck at the moment on not having a county-wide partner. I don't want this to be structured in a way that excludes businesses or new members outside of those 3 municipalities, or gives the impression that we're not interested in recruiting or having members outside of the 3 municipalities. We could divvy it up where, surrounding towns around Middlebury, we still make that Better Middlebury Partnership donation. Same thing with Virgins and Bristol. We could seek a different county partner. But again, in lieu of any board action on this, I at least wanted to take an opportunity to update the board on this effort. We have not started actively promoting this because, again, I wanted to wait till we had all our MOUs and I was at least able to update the board. So as far as next steps, again, I anticipate getting the Virgins MOU back this week. I've had great conversations with all 3 downtown organizations. They're all very excited. And really all we're asking them to do is to just be a partner in promoting our services and the value of our membership. And we also want to use this as an opportunity to not just promote ourselves, but to promote them as well. So again, there's been, I think, great coordination and collaboration with those organizations. We're excited to announce this and really roll it out more formally. But I also, again, I didn't want to formally roll this out and start promoting it until I, at the very least, inform the board and, got board approval, which, we can wait until next month for that vote. But really, interested in just understanding, any board thoughts on this and how the board would like to approach it from an approval standpoint. If the board wanted to do a motion and approve this today, again, I think that would allow us to move forward, but didn't want to take any further action until I consulted the board. And these were not included in the board materials, but I can add them to SharePoint. I do have the MOUs with the Better Middlebury Partnership and Bristol Core available here for review. Again, these are very simple. I tried to keep it as easy as possible for our partner organizations, basically saying, hey, we'll make these donations on a monthly basis. And we just ask that, you help spread the word about all the great things we do, which they've all been very amenable to. And just so folks are aware, this is the donation structure that we've included in there. So again, I haven't signed anything and I'm happy to wait until the board takes action to sign off on this, but curious if folks have any thoughts. I'm also very interested if folks have any thoughts around a potential county partner or a way we could include businesses outside the big 3 municipalities.
This is a one-time donation, right, Alex?
Yes,
Right.
yeah, so
Okay.
those annual memberships are paid on an annual basis, so yeah, once somebody pays their membership due, we would just track that, and each month, if we have 3 new members, 2 for Middlebury, 1 for Virgins, we would just make those donations then. And again, in the MOU, it's designed to go through the end of the year so that at the end of the year, we can get back with our partners and the board and say, hey, here's how this went. And then we could extend it through July 1 of 2026 through the rest of our fiscal year. And basically review it and just see how it went. The
But if you
last thing
have a
I'll-
new member, it's it's a donation just for that first year, not beyond that. Not if it's a recurring membership, right?
Yeah, we did not,
Yeah.
we did not include renewals.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's try
we're
it.
really excited about it. And I will say, and folks I think are very well aware of this, membership it's really challenging. Renewals have been challenging, but recruiting those new folks is really challenging as well. So for me, from a management perspective, I have no qualms about giving up a little revenue, for these new folks. Yeah, I'd rather get, $1,000 from a new tier 7 member than no dollars by not recruiting them otherwise, so.
Understood.
So I guess
I'm not,
my,
oh, sorry, somebody else.
no, Susan, I'll let you go.
I was gonna say, I don't know that not having a countywide partner yet should hold this up. I
Okay,
think you can keep trying. I mean, that's just my own 2 cents, but I think we need members and this is a great community effort and somebody else might want to play too down the line, but and then maybe you might get some in where you're like, all right, this, we can extend this, but I think I would move forward with this and not, let that be a deterrent. That's just my own gut reaction.
I would agree with Sue on that. I don't know that, I wouldn't consider the countywide partner not having one a deal breaker for this, so.
I'd agree with that. Alex, you asked for suggestions, maybe
Yeah.
workforce development related stuff. So maybe the Hannaford Career Center or some adult education or something of that nature.
yeah, it's a great idea.
But I agree with Sue and Jason.
So with that in mind, we will, as soon as we get that MOU back from Virgins, we will proceed with rolling this out and launching the program. Yeah, if the board is comfortable, and Jason, I don't know if you'd like to do a motion and a vote on that, but, yeah, good direction.
That's a tough one. So once again, to me, this is more operations and recruitment.
Yeah.
I don't know that this, it goes back to Sue's comment about governance. I don't know that this really, as long as you're working within your budget, I don't know that we need to approve this.
Okay, great.
What's everybody else's take on that?
Just do it.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree.
I think as a board, we need to have a bigger, broader conversation about governance. And what our role as a board is, what our, and revisit our committees and whatnot as we move forward. Especially with, Alex is gonna have a lot of things over the next year that are gonna be pretty fast moving. And what I don't want to do is get the board mired in the weeds of how we're doing that. But I also want to make sure that the board as a whole is comfortable with, the direction of the organization and what our role in supporting the organization is. So, and I work with a lot of boards and I see that one of the biggest deficiencies is a comprehensive understanding of board governance. In that, boards tend to think they're one step removed from management, not one step removed from ownership. So, but I see this falling within recruitment, within operations, within our strategic goals. This is more the means of how we're getting, to those goals. We're holding him accountable to those goals. How he gets there is kind of his deal. That's how I've always viewed these kind of things. I got one thumbs up and then crickets.
No,
Oh,
I agree.
Jason.
Okay.
I think, I'll make sure we're not slowing them down.
All right. Unless there's any other discussion on that, we do not need an executive session. Is that still the case, Alex?
Yep.
So at this point, I'd take a motion to adjourn unless anybody has any other business that we need to address.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Recording has stopped.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again for
Thank you, Jason.
coming in a week, this Thursday.